So I've been wanting to make a video on something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I'm sure there's already been lots of material on this, not only in the form of documentaries, YouTube videos, but also varying religions have explored the idea of this. But I think I may have a particular spin angle I'd like to look at it from. But the idea is really simple. It's that contrary to popular zeitgeist, happiness is not the purpose of life. It's not the meaning of life. The point of life is to not find happiness. Um, is to define that a little bit. I think the concept I'm pointing at is this kind of unconscious feeling that you're supposed to reach some state where you find happiness and that most of the time you'll feel happy. And it's like this static state that you achieve when you have everything together and everything is in its right place, and you've achieved some material level where you have enough money and you have all the material items, or you have some kind of job or some kind of status or some kind of relationship situation or whatever, and you achieve this state and you've reached happiness. And I'm sure many people have talked about that, but here's the angle I want to put on it is that, first of all, that is probably only a recent concept that probably came out of kind of Fifth Avenue 1950s Edward Bernays type of programming uh, associated with the American advertising industry. Um, because what it results in, if you think about it that way, really, if you think about life that way, what you're going to experience most of the time is disappointment. You're going to be dissatisfied most of the time. You're going to be frustrated. Um, and, you know, I can't speak for other countries, but if I look around my country of the USA, that's palpable in many cases, especially with the advent of social media, things like Instagram, that there's some kind of unconscious feeling that you're looking at Instagram. I don't really use Instagram that much myself, even though I did start one associated with this YouTube channel if anyone's interested, but I don't know if I'll do much with it. We'll see. But, you know, I wanted to avoid saying this, but I think women in particular are vulnerable to this. Not all women, obviously, but I've noticed many of them are, where you're in this state of cognitive dissonance, or this kind of gap between looking at other people and thinking that they've reached the state, the static state of happiness, the nirvana state, and that feeling inside that you haven't, and therefore something must be wrong with you. And what it leads to is you're feeling frustrated and dissatisfied all the time. So, really, thinking that life is about happiness really is going to cause you to feel crummy most of the time. Um, but another way to look at it is that, first, this is a side note. Also, keep in mind, there's as far as life being about achieving happiness, first of all, happiness is, if it does show up in life, it's not that it doesn't exist, but it's usually a transient state. And it will typically arise in kind of an unexpected, unrelated fashion, where it's not like you achieve some big result and then you achieve this state of happiness which persists for a long time. It's usually when you're doing something, it arises for no reason. Sometimes it arises in the moment. It can even arise while you're working or doing something that you would typically find not fun. And it's transient. It's kind of like the icing on the cake, and to think that it should be the purpose of life is to find that again and again and again is kind of like saying, well, life is about eating ice cream every meal of the day and only eating ice cream and only eating the good stuff. And obviously, that's not what it's about, and that'll make you sick if you seek to do that. But it's of note that many religions, if you think about Buddhism or any kind of yogic practice, that people practice and study for their entire lives in extremely diligent fashion and sacrificing everything. Not and what they are trying to get is not even so much happiness, but the absence of suffering. And even though, according to some sources, they do achieve it, I'm sure it's not a static state that lasts for the rest of your life. I'm sure it's still transitory. Maybe they can sustain it for a longer period of time. But the point is that they do rigorous practices which they dedicate their entire life to, just to avoid suffering, just to not suffer. Not find some ecstatic state of bliss all the time, which is kind of what is being sold to you by the marketing industry, advertising industry, movies, social media. And of course, they want you because they say, well, if you buy my product, then you'll be happy. And think back about, before I go there, let's just point this out too. What this is confusing happiness with is hedonism, which is just pleasure. And in America, definitely that confusion is obvious. That if you have, some material, if you have enough designer clothes, you'll be happy. If you have a big house, you'll be happy. If you have a certain type of car, a certain type of social status, a certain type of job, a certain amount of money, then if you take, vacations to a particular place and take your selfies in the right format, then you'll be happy. That's really hedonism. And any careful observation of people who engage in hedonism, or any careful observation of people who are in a place to be able to live their life hedonistically, like celebrities, you can pretty easily observe that it doesn't lead to happiness. It's kind of leads to a downward spiral, and still, again, disappointment. But to flip it around, this is the way I think about it. And, other videos will be required to talk more about where these ideas come from, because it's a mixture of a lot of things. But recently I've been watching a lot of like near death experience videos. And I'm really into Hinduism, like Shaivism and Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita. I've gotten into esoteric Christianity, and also way into astrology. And a lot of this, it comes from the symbolism, the concept of Saturn, what the planet Saturn has represented through the ages. Um, but I find it helpful to think of it like this. Like, let's just say hypothetically that there's multiple dimensions, that what we call Earth, or this particular universe we're in, let's just call it a realm. We're in this physical realm, but there's more of them. And let's say maybe when you die, you go back to the source where you kind of are absorbed back into God or whatever the source is. It's a different dimension. And like is it described in many near-death experience videos, that it feels amazing. It's like pure nirvana. It feels like bliss, and everything's okay. And your consciousness is still intact. Any pain and resentment you experienced in your previous life is washed away, and you understand it all, and it's just this great place. That's perfect. Well, imagine living there for like eons, like a million years. It would get boring after a little while. You would want to maybe experience something more, adversity and stress and pain and striving. And maybe that's what this dimension is about, this realm. Maybe, a lot of people say we choose to come here maybe we choose to come here for adversity. Maybe this realm we're in is one of the most dense, challenging ones that you can come to. One that you really have to use your hands and your mind and to overcome constant challenges and to actually build something. And the reward is in that, in the striving, in the overcoming. And that I tend to view this realm as that. It's more of a test that, well, let's just think about it this way. Like, one of the fundamental ways I conceptualize this realm we're in that we call Earth is the fundamental thing we all have to contend with is gravity, which is a very powerful force that's acting on every atom in your body at all times. Even when you're sleeping, it's pulling your body down. It's trying to crush you against the earth. And this is a fact that everyone has to face at some point. And I like thinking about this. To me, this is a liberating thought, but gravity is going to crush every one of us at some point. Every one of us, everything on this earth, in this dimension, is going to be crushed by the force of gravity at some point. To me, that's like a comforting feeling. It's kind of like a liberating feeling. But yes, gravity is what is going to stop your diaphragm from moving at some point. So, with that in mind, it seems like the fundamental aspect of this physical realm, or we could think of it as a simulator. It's a physical simulator we come, and that you can think of it like a game, a video game, like a role playing game, like Skyrim if you've ever played that. And so, as far as the purpose of it, it seems like the primary purpose would be survive in the game for as long as you can, against gravity. Persist in gravity for as long as you can. And even if you can't that long, that's okay. But the goal is to survive. And that doesn't mean like have this militant, aggressive mentality where you're fighting everything all the time, but just to have the realization that gravity is acting on you at all times, trying to crush you. And that, this kind of shows you what having the mentality of, well, happiness is the point of life. It's kind of like a really wimpy mindset because you're just going to get disappointed. You're just going to get crushed. You need to realize that this dimension will crush you at some point. So, accept that and realize the point is to persist in it for as long as you can. And secondly, to accept the fact that it appears to be throwing you challenges at all times. Like, I think that's what causes a lot of the problems. Like, when you start from the mentality that, the point of life is happiness, you need to seek happiness, and someday you'll find it and everything will be perfect. What happens is that's what causes the experience of, oh, and then today this is happening, and then this happened, and now this is happening. How can that be? This isn't supposed to be happening. That's that dissatisfaction. There's a gap that you think, well, I should be happiness. I should be happy like these people on TV. I should be happy like they told me I'm supposed to. And then you're getting hit by challenges all the time, and you think it from an entitled place. You think this shouldn't be happening. It helps a lot just to realize that that's not what this realm is for. This is a testing facility. It is for being tested. You're going to be hit by challenges all the time. And if you accept that, then you'll be, if not more prepared, you'll rise to the occasion and it won't be such of a big deal. Oh, you'll be grateful. Oh, here's another challenge I get to test my soul with. Instead of from an entitled place, always being shocked, like this is not how it's supposed to be. This shouldn't be happening. I'm having a bad day. that's it causes that. And as far as, and this is the last thing I want to go in with this video, I think that's a lot of causing for, and I know you're not supposed to say this on YouTube, like unaliving. I've been in times in my life where I've felt like maybe I would unalive, and thankfully I never did. And thankfully I've grown and grown stronger since those times. But looking back on them, I think that has something to do with it. That's that gap, like thinking, well, I should be happy, and everything's so hard. Um, um, that you know, if you realize that no, this realm is a place that is predominantly for suffering, and it's for testing yourself and growing and becoming stronger in this hard physical dimension. Gravity's pulling on you all the time. All these challenges you're being beset by all these challenges. You're growing stronger. You're learning. It's kind of like stoicism is what it teaches. I mean, and also it teaches you a realization of something larger than yourself. You could call it God, but it's like this realm pushes you to find meaning, pushes you to find God, even if it's right at the very end. But anyway, the last thing I want to talk about, and this is what inspired me to make this video, was a YouTube video I saw of an interview with Tom York, the singer from Radiohead. And the lady interviewing him, I think, was known to him. I can't remember. I think it was on a recent project. He had done a soundtrack for some movie or something, and I think the woman interviewing him was part of that. Like, she was the conductor of the orchestra. She was involved in that musical project for this soundtrack. And it was a really good interview, but there was a kind of an awkward situation at the very end of the interview. She was like, "Can I ask you a personal question, Tom?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." But it was already weird because you could tell she was about to do something. She goes, "Are you happy?" And he was like, you could tell he was shocked for a little bit. And he was like, "Well, are you happy?" And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm glad that everyone's okay." And he handled it really well. But as I thought about it throughout the day, I started getting more and more offended for him. And this is something I wanted to point out, where there is this thing of happiness shaming. It's like this shaming feeling where you're supposed to be happy. And if you're not happy, something's wrong with you. You're not doing it right. You're not doing life right. Like, you should be happy all the time, or else you're messed up. Like, you're not doing it right. Um, and this is prevalent. That whole culture of Instagram, and especially, I'm sure that many men are subject to this, but to me, it seems to be predominantly women that get sucked into this Instagram vortex of, they're simultaneously obsessed with happiness and achieving happiness, and if others are achieving it, and kind of shaming people. Are you happy? What's wrong with you? You're a celebrity. You've achieved everything. You have money. You have all this lifestyle. You should be happy. But at the same time, they're miserable themselves. Um, that that's misguided. That's extremely misguided. That's the kind of mentality that causes people to unalive themselves, because they start feeling like, what is wrong with me? I'm not doing it right. Something must be wrong with me. Instead of realizing that, no, you're in a kind of like a video game. You're in a testing facility. It's a physical simulator that you came here to experience suffering and to persist through it. And if you see it like a game like that, then don't lose the game. It becomes a lot easier, instead of like this happiness shaming, like you're not together, you should be happy all the time. That's not the point. That's what made me want to make this video, is seeing that that interview because I wanted to say that the point of life is not happiness. It's not some panacea. There's a lot more going on in this realm besides having your job and your family life and your financial situation and your hobbies and your vacations together where you've achieved happiness. There's a lot more going on in this realm. Forces that are you experience torsion and crushing forces. You're going to get screwed up. Like you're going to get beat up by life if you think it's about happiness. Because when I look around, I see, a lot of people, pretty much everyone will have to go through tragedy at some point in their life. Um, and that seems to be what it's about. And it seems to be about persisting through those and growing from them and becoming stronger. And ultimately, gravity is still going to win in the end. It's still going to crush you. And so the test is to retain some form of integrity through the process. A simple way to say that is not losing your soul, not selling your soul, not selling out to hedonism, or what some people may term Satanism, where you just kind of give up and you just go fully into hedonism no matter what damage it causes or who else it affects. That's selling your soul, just kind of like a nihilistic approach to it, but instead taking a stoic approach and retaining your soul, retaining integrity. That seems to be what the test is about. So, you know, and when you think about it that way, when tragedy and suffering and challenges and bad days happen, if you keep in mind that, okay, well, the goal is to not lose the game. I just need to get through this part of the game to get to the next level. Instead of, if you think that happiness is there, that's kind of a wimpy mindset. It's going to shut you down. You're just going to be frustrated, like, why is this happening? I should be happy right now. So I just wanted to point that out, and I hope it helps. I hope it's not too controversial, but the point of life is not happiness. That doesn't mean that happiness doesn't come, but a mindset to practice, and this is in these religions, Buddhism and yoga, is to learn how to be grateful even in suffering, even in immense suffering, where you think it's never going to end and you've never felt pain that bad, to still find gratefulness within that. To me, that is the true definition of happiness. It's not some kind of hedonistic achievement. That's not going to these hedonistic achievements. Think about how much money you've spent in your lifetime on some book you thought was going to make you happy, some program you thought was going to make you happy, some materialistic purchase you thought was going to make you happy, some trip you thought was going to make you happy. Did it work? They cannot last in the face of what this realm has to throw at us, because this realm is designed to do that. In my belief, that's the approach I like to take. It's designed to do that. If it wasn't, it would be completely different here. Our experience would be completely different. It would be more like the Garden of Eden. And in the way I choose to believe it is that is actually where you get to go after you die, as a place where all the pain goes away and everything's resolved and you feel at equilibrium and it feels incredible. But that's not what this realm is for. And it seems like if there is a realm where everything feels amazing all the time and it's like perfect bliss all the time, it seems like there should be a realm where you get to go if you want, where you do get to challenge yourself with adversity and pain and suffering and experience what that is like. So the point of this video is just to maybe think about it that way and realize that don't freak out when that stuff is happening. Like, I like to think that we came here, we asked for that. We asked to come here to experience that and test ourselves with that. So don't freak out when it happens. Be grateful no matter how hard it is, for the opportunity to have it transform you and to work on yourself and to test your integrity and your persistence, and realize and you're still going to lose in the end. Gravity is still going to win. But there's no, commercial advertisement product thing you can buy that is going to save you from that. And that's the illusion that's been set up. Realize that that's a recent mentality, that life is about happiness. Um, I would like to think that people from older generations before the 20th century, like the pioneer days, probably had a better understanding that life is not about happiness, that it's tough and that they're suffering. But it's even in the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness. And I guess that's what we're all trying to do, is we're pursuing that state. But it's helpful to realize that it's probably never going to get there. It's never going to be there. And if you have the mentality that it should be there, but what's wrong with me that I'm not there yet, really what you'll probably lead is a life of disappointment. You'll be constantly frustrated and feeling shamed. Don't let anyone shame you about happiness. I don't know anyone that's gotten there. Like, even yogis or Buddhists, people who dedicate their entire life to it's hard for even them to achieve a lasting state of peace or the absence of suffering. So, um, embrace challenge and suffering. Realize that maybe that's what it's supposed to be happening in this realm, and what the purpose of life is to persist in those conditions, for as long as you can. But anyway, that's the video. All right.